Hello, and welcome to week 2 of English 120. Please note that this lecture will be divided into 2 parts. I can only upload 15 minutes at a time, so it's very important that you watch both parts. It'll be about a 30-minute lecture. This week, we're going to be covering the following topics. We're going to be talking about the academic writing process, and we're going to be talking about how to write an argumentative essay. You'll have 3 essays to read before you begin work for this week. Susan Sontag's essay regarding the pain of others, the excellent argument article called Argument, Critical Thinking, and Rationality, also found in the Conscious Reader, and Peggy Orenstein's article, What's Wrong with Cinderella, which is also found in the Conscious Reader. The assignments you need to complete this week are the discussion forum, which is understanding argument for week 2. You need to attend a library visit, but this is optional, and there's more details about that within here. You also need to complete, as every week, you need to complete your active reading journal, and there will be a prompt posted for you to respond to, just like last week. And you're going to be assigned your first formal assignment for this class, your argumentative essay. In comp class, there's 3 units you need to complete, 3 research lessons: locating research for various types of information needs, comprehending and assessing the appropriateness of resources, and critically assessing the credibility and validity of sources. Now, I know this is a lot of work, you guys, but this is a summer class, and so it's condensed. So normally what we're doing here is something that would take 2 or 3 weeks, but because we have a class that's only 6 weeks long, this is how it happens. So make sure you give yourself lots of time this week to complete all the tasks you need to complete. And as always, you can send me an email at idunkel@napavalley.edu, and I will respond within 24 hours with a response to help you. All right, let's start with the first section of the lecture, the academic writing process. There's really 3 phases to the academic writing process. The first phase is where you generate ideas. You're given an assignment and you really try to figure out as many ways that you can approach it in order to find the best way. Then you plan, draft, and develop your paper. And finally, you go back and revise and edit your paper. Now this process, as you can see, is a cycle. It can continue and continue and continue until you have your best paper possible. The writing process begins with pre-writing. You use pre-writing to generate ideas, that first stage in this process. So the first step, no matter what, is to review the assignment to understand what you need to accomplish with your writing. Now let me tell you, I've been teaching writing for many years, and the number one place where students fail is they do not read the assignment sheet. The assignment sheet tells you exactly how you will be graded on this assignment, so please take the time to review the assignment sheet so you know exactly what's expected of you. Step 2. Once you know what you're supposed to do, you want to generate ideas to figure out how to do it. There's a lot of pre-writing techniques that you can use in order to generate ideas. And I recommend you do more than one, not just one. But I'm going to give you several different options. And depending on the type, it's your choice what kinds you want to do. But I always start with free writing. Me personally, that is the way that I can generate the most ideas, whether I'm writing creatively or I'm writing an academic article. So the first one is called brainstorming. And one way to do this is to just think of a word like apple and just in your head, what's the first word you think of when I say the word apple? For me, it's tree. For you, it might be Adam and Eve, or it might be pie. It totally depends on your brain. And the idea is to find in your subconscious ideas that you have connected to a topic. Now, please don't start with the word apple. Start with an idea that's very connected to what you're going to be writing on. This is a good way if you're totally stuck to kind of open it up. And you can do it with friends too. It can be a kind of a fun game. Another way, which I was just talking about, is free writing. That's where you just tap into your unconscious by writing without stopping for a period of time. I like to do it for 10 to 15 minutes. And what you do is you take out a paper and pen, or you open up a new document and in your word processor, and you just write a sentence at the top of the page. So maybe you want to talk about how Cinderella is not a bad influence on young girls. So you write that at the top of your page. And then for 10 minutes, you're going to write everything that comes to your mind about this topic. You don't want to censor yourself. You want to free your mind to let it wander. You may start talking about, something completely different, like an experience you had once in Disneyland when you were 5 years old. That's totally okay. If you get stuck while you're doing it, you want to start asking yourself questions, and you might want to have these at the top of the page so you can go back to them. What interests you about the topic? What do you care most about? What do you know about it that the next person doesn't? What have you read about this topic, observed, or heard about? How might you feel about this topic if you were someone else? If you haven't, you want to repeat this process as many times as you need to. Sometimes people just free write twice, and that's how they do their pre-writing. But it completely depends on what's best for you. So I want you to try these all out. Another way, if you're more an artistic person, you can doodle or sketch. What you do is you take out a blank piece of paper and try doodling or sketching your way to a paper topic. You begin with a key visual at the center or top of the page. Maybe if you're writing about Cinderella, you draw a picture of Cinderella, and then kind of free write by drawing pictures of things that are related to that in some way for you, and expand on it in that way. So you'll do it all with pictures. It's a good way to start for people, again, who think very visually. Also, if you think visually, another way to do it is mapping. You can use Post-it notes, or you can use something like cloud software and do something called mind mapping. And that's where you put at the center of the page, you put the main topic that you are thinking about talking about, like if you're thinking about talking about the effect of Cinderella on little girls, or princess images on little girls, then you would start. You would start letting associating ideas and mapping them out of that main topic, and then you can go into little subtopics of the other topics. As you can see in the picture that I have here, not the lady with the stick-it notes on her head, but the one below it. That's a picture of a mind map, and that's using cloud software. The other way you can do it is to ask reporters questions. So take your topic and try to define it using this technique, asking who is Susan Ornstein? Who is Cinderella? What is that based upon? Or what is I have it here. I have an example here based on John F. Kennedy. So you could ask, what happened to Kennedy? What events led up to the assassination? What happened during it? What did the media do? Where was Kennedy assassinated? When was he assassinated? Why was Kennedy assassinated? How was Kennedy assassinated? And you keep asking questions in each one. You want to try to fill up a page with several questions about who, several questions about what. That's a good way. If you're a real inquisitive person, this is a good way to get the information out. So once you've generated ideas, then it's time to start discovering material. So to shape and support your ideas, you'll always need evidence. Those are facts, figures, reports, opinions, or examples to support what you're saying. Find evidence through your own experience and knowledge. You've lived a life and you've experienced things, or through your research. And don't worry, we're not doing hardcore library research yet. Right now, you're just using research from the essays that you've read so far. But we will be getting a library orientation this week in order to get ready for next week when we will begin to collect articles. But you will be learning how to do that as part of this course, so don't worry if you're not really comfortable with it yet. When you do research, you want to find materials that draw you to new approaches, and they make you think critically about these sources. So one thing to think about is when when you're actively reading, you're engaging with the text. You're really trying to understand it and ask questions about it. That's critical thinking. You want to do the same thing when you're writing an academic essay. Maybe your topic, you feel very strongly that that princesses really, the idea of princesses really affect young girls. And you feel very adamant about that. You might want to explore sources that have the opposite opinion as you in order to understand the other side. And we will be talking a little bit about that in the next part of this lecture when I talk about argument. All right, so once you've generated the ideas, the next stage is to plan, draft, and develop. So when you plan, you're going to identify your purpose and your audience. Why are you writing this paper? And who are you writing it for? Decide on one main point that you're going to make. That's your thesis. It's going to become your thesis. And then state that thesis. Then you want to organize your ideas by grouping or outlining. What are the subtopics you're going to talk about, and how are you going to support them? Once you have that worked out in your mind, then you start writing. You start and you restart. You let yourself, write that introduction and then read it. And then if it's not to your liking, rewrite it, or write through the whole thing and then go back. You want to build your paragraphs. You want to make sure you open with a solid introduction, and then you conclude by really summarizing all the main points you've made and telling us how you've proven your thesis. You want to make sure you create coherence. That means you want it to really flow from one paragraph to the other. I want to feel like I understand where you're going from one point to the next. When you develop, that's where you go back to your draft and you begin to explain and support. Maybe you're making a point about how Disney princesses are not a good influence on young girls. You would bring in facts and figures, statistics from perhaps Peggy Orenstein's article that support what you're saying. Or you bring in definitions and examples and details, or an actual quote, some evidence, an actual quote from Orenstein's article to support what you're saying. Once you have identified your purpose, you really want to refine it. So hopefully in your pre-writing, you've really come to a clear idea of what your purpose is in writing your paper, okay? What you want to do, so for example, if you have an abstract idea like parking in the morning before class is annoying, right? That feels really like an opinion rather than a thesis statement. But you want to find something that you can defend and support with evidence. It'd be really tough to show how it's annoying, but you can say that campus parking is a big problem because you can supply evidence of statistics of how many parking spaces there are and how many permits there are and how many students are in session at that time to support what you're saying. All right, to continue. Once you arrange your ideas and material in a sensible order, that means once you've created a bit of an outline with the ideas you have towards proving your topic, then you want to really refine your thesis statement so that you break it down into parts. This is a really good way to introduce the subtopics you're going to be talking about in your paper. So to expand on the parking on campus problem, you could say parking on campus is a problem for students because of the long lines, inefficient entrances, and poorly marked spaces. This is a solid thesis statement. Remember, the thesis is the main point in your essay, and it's your slant. It's the reason why you're writing about this topic, the position you're going to take in this paper. If you don't discover a solid thesis while you're planning, you don't have to worry. You're going to have time to perfect your thesis while you develop your draft. But it's really important by the end of your draft, you have a solid thesis. Then, once you have drafted, once you have completed your planning, then you start drafting and developing. You want to write. The structure that you've begun to develop should just really set you off and set you free to start writing about your topic. You want to weave in these explanations and definitions, as I said, to support what you're saying, but your basic template should be, in your introduction, you want to introduce your topic and state your thesis. In the body paragraphs, you want to develop subtopics to prove your thesis. Each body paragraph should clearly cover a subtopic and relate the subtopic back to your thesis. Each subtopic is supported with ample evidence. Finally, your conclusion, tell us how you've proven your thesis. What has the reader gained by reading your paper? How does your paper relate to a larger purpose? These are really important facts, and it's important that you really support this. Now I'm going to stop this lecture right now, and I'm going to come back and talk about writing argument essays. So don't forget to watch the second part.